Aloha guys, Molly here from Discover the Big Island Real Estate. I have an amazing interview here. His name is Clark Kahawaii with Elite Pacific Property Management. We're going to be discussing a topic that is of interest to many, and that is how to properly manage your property here in Hawaii effectively. A lot of you guys are wanting to get a property in paradise and you're wanting to get an investment property, either condo or a home. It is highly advisable to hire somebody on island. And for that, we have Clark, that he's an incredible gentleman and he's going to help us understand what it is that his company do. And Clark, take it away, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you for the introduction, Molly. We are a property management team under the Elite Pacific Brokerage. We are mostly in Kona, in Kailua, Kona specifically, but we handle the entire west side of the island. And so we have a team. In general, we manage about 150 properties, and that's not to boast, but that is to give a little credibility of what we do.
Mhm.
So in general, for a long-term rental property management service, we're going to offer everything that you would imagine a property manager would do, to where an owner can be hands off, collect rent at the end of the month, and not have to worry about their property. So what that goes into is marketing and advertising, property showings, tenant screenings, lease creations. We have a legal team that reviews those. We lease negotiations. We do move out, and move in inspections, annual inspections on top of that, online rent collection, maintenance coordination. It goes on and on. And when you get to the financial side, it's tax documents and monthly financial statements where they can see cash flow. Everything's paperless nowadays. There's direct deposits, direct owner disbursements. And then the one that everybody is always scared of is eviction oversight, is what we do. So,
Right. I mean, that sounds incredible because every item thing that you just listed here, it's something that the homeowner is not going to be handling, right? I mean, that's why they hire these services, because imagine if you're a team of one and into managing all the things that you just described, it's kind of like a full-time job.
exactly.
Especially if you're operating an STVR, right?
Yes.
Now, here comes a question that comes very often, and these are the communications that you and I have when they appear. But how do
Mhm.
you determine the appropriate rental rates for long-term properties in short terms, and what it is that you consider in those assessments when you are providing those numbers to the clients? Because those are very important, especially if you are an investor.
Yeah, of course. So, in general, it's very similar to what you do on the real estate sales side. There's a lot of factors like location and bedroom count, and does it have an ocean view? Does it have a pool and spa? All of those typical things go into a estimate for what we think a property could rent for, whether it's a vacation rental or a long-term property. At the same time, we are knee deep inside of the market every day. So
Mhm.
I could tell you that we pull comps all the time, but at the end of the day, I could tell you what a property would rent for from pictures that you send me. And I can pull it pretty quick because we manage so many properties that we have these comps on hand. And for rental comps, it's not like you can compare yearly data like on the MLS for a sales, for a home sale.
That's so true.
So so it helps to have that economy of scale where we have all these properties that we manage. So it actually helps us estimate how much someone, whether it's a vacation rental long term, will rent for.
Right. You know what I appreciate about you, Clark, is that you not only approach the price assessment as to, oh, let's just try out this number. You tend to give a very conservative, right, and realistic,
Mhm.
and set the expectations realistic to the clients, so that they have a real expectation, right, as far as how much they can rent the property for. Because
Yeah,
you know
definitely.
they may encounter other property managers, and they say, well, we can probably like get it for this much, and you're like, what? Like the market doesn't sustain, right? So he's coming from also from that space.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you deal with it on your side too. But
Yes.
it's here's the thing: every owner thinks their property is the best,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing, right? Everyone should really care about their property and want to invest in it. And so I don't take that away from owners at all. Now, at the same time, the market is the market, right? It's simple supply and demand.
Right.
Um, and here's the thing: back in the day, I mean, it's still somewhat prevalent now, but the whole "I'm going to tell you it's going to rent for this much" as a sales tactic still happens, um, and people give. And I'm not saying certain property managers do it, but we do see it, and it's in every industry that there's a sales tactic of providing that it's going to do this much, regardless if they actually think it can do that much, and then they'll eventually step down and price it where it should be.
Yeah.
Just in our experience, it's better to price the property perfectly the first time.
Right.
It usually ends up renting for more, and it rents quicker. And
Right.
at the end of the day, that's the goal.
And you know what? And also, it goes by saying that there's also time that you're not wasting. There's also mortgage that you're not paying when
Mhm.
keeping this property unoccupied if the property is not priced properly. So yeah,
Exactly.
no, kudos to you for doing that and for guiding these very sometimes challenging conversations with clients and really setting up realistic expectations right off the bat because they always come back around, right? I
Always.
mean, it's like they may go
Always.
with the other property management and they're like, well, my property didn't rent for 6 months. And then you come in and assess and see, right, and adjust.
Yeah,
So,
and we try to make sure we're always honest. That's one of our main things.
yeah,
But then we typically under promise and over deliver,
that is a
just in
thousand
general.
percent.
Yeah.
Now, for people that are watching and are going, okay, great, I love Clark, I want to engage, and they have an understanding of the process. The screening process is one that it is so delicate. I mean, in any background history of anybody, something could pop up, right? So, do you mind sharing how do you guys tackle the due diligence that you guys do on the tenants? And this is mainly for long-term tenants.
Mhm. Yeah, so it is an important process, probably one of the most important processes that we actually do, and we have a pretty stringent vetting process, just in general, because ultimately, I prefer to prevent problems than solve them. That's what I tell everybody all the time. If we can prevent anything from happening that shouldn't, better than solving it after it happens. So just in general, if you want to talk numbers, we prefer a 700 credit score plus. Now, there are people that have 650 plus, and they have reasons, and
Mm,
it's not an automated process where it spits out a number and they get denied or accepted. We are manually going through every single one of these, and if there are questions that we have, we'll reach out to the tenant, and sometimes people have good reasons. It just depends. I mean, ultimately, we're all human. Nobody's perfect, so we'll usually give them the opportunity if the owner wants to give them that chance. Ultimately, the owner has the ultimate say at the end of the day. But then we also look for proof of 3 times the rent and income. Some people, some property managers, if you ask them, why do you guys ask for 3 times? A lot of them will say, that's just what we do. And here's the reason that we actually ask for 3 times. This isn't a product that we sell once, right? This is a home that people live in. We're building relationships with these people, and we don't want them to have to, at some point, pick between rent and groceries, right? We
right.
want everybody to be able to afford where they live, and we want them to live happily where they're at. So just asking for the 3 times in rent, it gives a standard for somebody actually being able to afford a place comfortably.
Right. Right. And it
Yeah. So
also ensures that, they can afford the ongoing, right, the ongoing rent, and it provides more security also to your clients, right?
exactly, that's the other side of it,
Yeah.
and that's kind of part of. it's kind of part of property management in general is we have so many different customers, and we have four main customers, right? We have our
Mhm.
owners, we have our guests and our tenants, we
Mhm.
have our vendors, and then we even have our own employees.
Right.
So each customer is a little different, and you got to appeal to them in a certain way. So at the same time that yes, you're making sure somebody can afford it on the tenant side, you're also making sure your owner gets paid every month. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
and so
And
the
yeah, and that is the core, right, of your services.
mhm. I was going to say the other thing we look for is 2 years of home ownership or rental history, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Right.
Um, and then we also do social media screening, which is kind of a new one,
Mhm.
not necessarily to us, but in general.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not to say that we care about their views on politics or their views here and there.
Mhm.
It's more so say they didn't put a pet on their application, but we see pets in your pictures.
Right.
Or you say you're a single occupant, but you have a family of four.
Mm.
And now, when we get into all that, fair housing is very protective, and so we're very careful when we ask certain questions.
Right.
Um, but we will confirm certain facts that you put in an application and make sure that everything goes in step with what you're saying.
Right. You just touch on a point that it is the least thing that we talk about, which is fair housing. I think that if you're very new to this, right, that can be a hole for anybody to fall into if you don't truly understand, right, the
Mm-hmm.
parameters of your questions, what it is that you can ask. That's why that's another one, a million reasons why people should hire this out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just not if this is your first time, right, and if you're very unfamiliar with processes and how to onboard somebody, I think you just touched on a really good and big point there, um,
No,
which is fair
definitely.
housing, right? Yeah.
And
Um,
not only fair housing, but Hawaii in general is totally different than renting anywhere else.
a thousand
Um,
percent.
so I spent a lot of time in Texas, and I had my own investment properties, and I had my own rentals,
Mm-hmm.
and there, like, you could rent to anybody with anything, and there's not a lot of rules to it. Um, so here in Hawaii, if you don't know the rules and keep up with the rules, because the rules always change, it's hard to follow follow the straight and narrow. So
Right.
when it's your full time job, like what we do, we're always reviewing the new bills that come out that are in Congress, that we're trying to figure out what's going to pass and to what capacity. And just in general, I'm not saying that anybody couldn't manage their own place, because I think they can. And there's a lot of people that do, and they're
Yep.
successful at it. At the same time, if you don't want to do all the work and learning all that stuff, that's the service that we can fill in for.
Right. I guess they're doing it right, right? I mean,
Mhm.
anybody can just, open up the home and welcome the rentals. I think they're doing it right, right?
Yeah.
You're less open to liability, right? Like,
Definitely. You never really need to know the rules until you need to know the rules, right? Until it comes to get you. So,
all right. All that happens in my
oh
on my
yeah,
side very, very much on a daily. That is so true.
yeah.
So yeah, that is incredible. So in order to, now you have onboarded the client and you have welcomed a tenant. How does your company deal with not employee tenant satisfaction? How do you guys keep up or continue the conversations with the tenants after they have signed up a long term rental agreement, and also short term? I mean, short term
Yeah,
we can touch on that, but how
yeah.
do you handle the long term?
Gotcha. Yeah. So tenant satisfaction in general, it's an ongoing process. Like I said, this isn't a product we sell once to a customer and then see them again in a couple of years. It's building trust over time, and however that looks can take many different forms. So at the end of the day, we're making sure that they have a nice place to live in. It's clean when they move in. We handle maintenance requests quickly, and we do it well. And we, in general, just create an environment where they feel comfortable coming to us if something's wrong at the property, if they don't feel comfortable somewhere else. And all it really comes down to is clear communication. At the end of the day, what we do is not difficult. We're people movers and experience creators. That's all we do. And a lot of what I tell a lot of people is my job is making sure everybody does their job.
Right.
Uh, and so a lot of it is it's not difficult the tasks that we do every day. What's difficult is doing it at scale.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like juggling. Like it's not hard to juggle a ball or two, but try juggling 10 of them. So just that way, we try to make sure that every owner, every tenant, every guest, every vendor, and even every employee feel like they're the only one that we have, and we
Wow.
do it at massive scale. Um, so that's our goal at the end of the day. Now, short term, it's guest satisfaction is different from tenant satisfaction.
Yes.
So if you're referring to guest satisfaction, we're trying to create the wow factor when they walk in their property, and we're trying to recreate that over and over every week for the new guests that come in. So on a normal week, we have anywhere from 40 to maybe 90 check-ins. Um, and so you need to get the guests up to speed on the property that they're in as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're dealing with new people every week, and each personality is different. You have some guests that are very laid back, some are very high strung, some need everything to go perfectly, some are just happy to be in Hawaii.
Yes.
So at the same time that we manage properties, a lot of what we do is managing personalities too.
Oh boy. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And
yeah.
I think, I mean, you said it so beautifully, and you are these two type of customers, right? Are so
Mm-hmm.
diverse. One is
Mm-hmm.
staying for the long term, right? And the other one is just coming here for the week. And sometimes, they see you guys as the point of everything, right? You
Uh-huh.
are the island, the tour guide, the
Exactly.
person that knows everything. You're the only point of contact that they know of, right? They don't know
Mm-hmm.
anybody, only the person that has onboarded them on the vacation. So I can only imagine how fun, but also how labor intensive that is to continue to maintain.
Exactly.
So kudos to you guys for keeping
Yeah.
the travelers happy. But
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, but that's incredible. And also something that you said earlier, that you're wanting to foster an environment of comfort with the tenant. I think that is key.
Mm-hmm.
I think from being on the island and transacting and learning of other property manager that do handle things differently, right? They are of the mindset of the more stricter I am, the better. And what you said really resonated, because it's like you're creating a safe space. You don't want them to not tell you about a leak that is happening, right, out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not going to tell my property manager. They may say that X, Y, and Z, right? They don't tell you. It's better to just create that environment so that if there's any issues, they know who to go to, right? And not go
Mm-hmm.
a DIY, or which brings us to the next question, which is on repairs and maintenance. How
Mm-hmm.
does these get handled? So people are on vacation, right? They're having the most amazing time on island, and things happen, right? The refrigerator
Mm-hmm.
breaks, the AC stops working, multiple things that can happen on their vacation. How do you guys handle that on short term and also long term?
Yeah. So in general, it's hard to necessarily make a blanket statement for how something is handled like that, um, and put it all in one box. Now we get all the time. So on the long term side, of course, it's not nearly as intensive as the vacation rentals. Vacation rentals has a unique perspective of where you have somebody checking out at 10 o'clock and you have somebody checking in at 4. So your vendor has about 6 hours, and everybody wants to check out late and everybody wants to check in early.
Right.
So to get somebody in, take care of the repair, a lot of what that takes is having strong relationships with your vendors.
Yes.
So yeah, so we don't, all of our vendors are third party. So we don't benefit from any of the maintenance, any of the cleaning. We don't profit from that. That's something that we pair up with vendors on island.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and each situation is unique, but with all these different experiences that we've had, we've built relationships with these different experts in each field, whatever it is. And that's kind of an ongoing growth to our vendor side. And because we rely on them to succeed. If they don't succeed, then we don't succeed.
Right.
Um, and so we kind of lean on each other. And most of that, again, comes down to communication. We're not, what we're asking them is not difficult necessarily, unless I'm asking them to carry a water heater up to the attic. But in general, it's it's just clear expectations and clear instructions on what we need from them. And
Mm-hmm.
as a as a referral partner, we're a big part of their business. So the more that we can help our vendors, the more that they'll help us in return.
Beautifully said. I think for the people that are not familiar with the islands, sometimes they're unaware as the level of resources that we have as an island, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't have, 1,000 handymans. We have handyman Juan, right? It's
Yeah, yeah. I wish we
which
had
you
1,000
probably
handy.
which you have probably transacted with him. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
like we're on an island, and
Mm-hmm.
keeping relationships with vendors is key. So thank you so much for saying that, and for providing a glimpse as to how it is that you guys handle repairs when they come. Um,
Yeah.
as far as reporting, what can people expect from getting a report from your company once they sign up?
Yeah, so we totally believe in full transparency, regardless of it's good news, bad news. Unfortunately, in our line of work, we don't have too many opportunities for good news calls. Most of our conversations are because
Right.
there's something wrong, right?
Right, that is. Well, in your line
It's
of work, yes.
yeah, it's
Okay.
just the nature of the business. So
Yeah.
but so what that comes with is we want all financials to be totally transparent. The owners can access them at any time. And so what they'll get is they'll get monthly owner statements with cash flow reports. They can see all the cash going in their account, all the cash going out for any repairs, any fees, whatever. Show rent rolls on the long term side. We put every work order that we handle for them into these statements as well, so they'll have a copy of invoices for each repair that's done at their property. We tend to make it a best practice to let them know ahead of time. We never want our owners to be surprised that there was a $400 repair.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so we put all those in there. We have at the end of the year we have annual cash flow statements for tax purposes. We have the rest of their tax documents. We send them their 1099. We actually filed general excise tax for most of our owners as well. That comes with the G45 and G49.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But in general, we handle most of that so that, and a lot of times I do have owners that come to me and say, "Hey, can I get this and this?" But for the most part, they have their own portal, and they can always go onto their portal and look at these at any time.
That's great. And I think the level of transparency, right, that helps
Mhm.
people get comfortable with an ongoing relationship, right? I mean,
Mhm.
for most of these contracts, they're like a 1 year contract, right? And if they want to renew, they
Mhm.
continue to renew. But I think that's great that there's transparency within the company. Let's talk about a very popular question, but not fun for us to talk about. How do you guys deal with squatters? You guys deal with these
Mhm.
evictions?
We do run into every once in a while is a holdover tenant, which is what a lot of people consider a squatter. And essentially, what that is it's a tenant that had a lease with us, and it was a fixed lease. And when it came time to move out, they did move out. So, in general, then you get into the nitty gritty. Well, you have to submit for a summary possession. You send a notice to vacate, and the eviction process starts. Right. Um, in order to avoid it from happening at all, again, I'm trying to prevent the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, unless we have specific instructions from our owners not to do it, all of our leases automatically convert into a month-to-month lease after their fixed term. And in general, we're going to reach out before the end of the lease term anyway, just to touch base with the tenant and see if they want to renew their lease at the end of their lease. And then we'll write a new lease before that lease ends, so that it just transfers over, so that we don't have that holdover tenancy. Now, if it actually did get to an eviction, um, typically what we do is we get our owner in contact with a litigator attorney that we know,
Yeah.
that does deal with this on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, eviction is not it's not pretty. It could take anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months, and
2 years.
typically, yeah, I mean, yeah, honestly, it could. Now, I say 6 weeks to 6 months because that's what this specific attorney says is the worst case, and that's who we get our owners in contact with. But specific to our business, in the last 14 years that our owner founder has been doing this, we have had 3 evictions and over 14 years, and those 3 evictions were all inherited tenants. So we did not place those tenants. Those tenants came along with the property when we took on the property.
Wow.
So knock on wood, we haven't had any of our own tenants that we've had to evict. Now, of course, things do happen if we've gotten close to it, but we haven't had any of our own evictions yet.
That is incredible.
Over the last couple of years, it has happened to me once. And once we sent our notices to vacate, and the whole eviction process is very much same thing like what I said about Hawaii having strict rules and regulations. There's very strict steps of how to evict someone.
Right.
And so once we start that process, usually once we send those notices to vacate, we haven't had any issues after that.
Right.
And a lot of that starts with we've been communicating before those notices have even gone out that this is what's expected and this is what's going to happen if those expectations aren't met.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's incredible that you guys do have the processes in place. You guys have the contacts if they're needed, and can refer out if yeah, because for anything major, an attorney gets involved, right? And once an attorney gets
Mm-hmm.
involved, oh boy, the fees.
Oh yeah.
The fees. I had a situation where one of my clients was facing that problem, and he was
Mm-hmm.
already $50,000 into it. It took them about a year to get these family evicted. It was not pretty, and there was much more, but
Wow.
yeah, it's not inexpensive to do it if you're faced with it. So
Mm-hmm.
that this is the also the weighing of the cost, right? Do
Mm-hmm.
you know how to handle this? It's like, do you know how
Exactly.
to do this? And if you know, hey, by all means. But if you don't, hire out.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. Now let's talk about your fees, Clark, for a minute. Um, so, do you guys have a monthly fee or a percentage fee for? And let's discuss long-term rental and
Mm-hmm.
short-term. How did the fees get processed so that people can understand?
Yeah. So in general, and most property management companies are this way, but we charge a percentage. And the reason that we charge a percentage is we want the owner to know that our goals are aligned with theirs.
Right.
Um, if the property doesn't rent, we don't make money. And that just goes without saying. So we don't want them, and the more that it rents for, the more money we make. So when I tell people that I'm conservative and I give a legitimate estimate of what I think it can rent for, trust me, I want it to rent for that amount that they want it to rent for too.
Right. Right.
But at the end of the day, my job is to inform the owner of what the market really is and what they can realistically expect. And don't get me wrong, I've been wrong before. But just in general, I hope that I'm more right than wrong most of the time. So anyway, so in general, everything is percentage, whether it's long term, short term. And we actually, I haven't really touched on it, but we also do estate management, which that is essentially a homeowner that doesn't want to rent their property, but they do want somebody to go in and check it out, make sure there's no leaks, make sure somebody's in the property. So we do that as well, and that's a flat fee, and it's totally customizable to what they want.
Mm.
Uh, it's almost like an a la carte menu. They can pick from this many inspections. They want maintenance done. They want a project done. That kind of thing. So, but in general, it's all percentage based.
Gotcha. Got it. And that goes to both, right? To
Yeah, for both.
your short-term rental pool and then your long-term.
Mm-hmm.
We live on an island, Clark, right? We live on a rock, and we have lava, right? We have active lava, and we have
Mm-hmm.
fog, and crazy to think about it, but yeah, we are on an active volcano. How do you guys handle, if we were to head into a natural disaster, right? What level of support do you guys offer to your renters, right? In general, I mean,
Yeah. So in general, the most basic form of what we do is we send out mass communication to everybody. Um, we remind them to stay up to date with the weather advisory board because usually
right.
they're putting stuff up there all the time. And maybe not so much reactively, but proactively, we require every tenant to have renter's insurance. And what that does is it covers all of their own belongings if there was some kind of disaster
Natural
that happened.
disaster.
Yeah. And then, of course, our homeowners, we require them to have homeowners insurance, which most people do anyway. But at the end of the day, we can try to prevent all these problems from happening, but some things are just inevitable.
Right.
Like look at Maui, what happened last year, and it's
Yeah.
so sad. All those people lost their homes, and we actually have property managers that are under the Elite Pacific brokerage that either had their own homes or had properties that they manage burned to nothing, and
Mm.
insurances over there aren't necessarily covering the full value of these homes.
Right.
Tenants are still to this day living in hotels over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, is there a way to prepare for something like that? I'm not sure. But I do know for a fact that we're going to be more prepared the next time something like that happens.
Right.
God forbid. And to be honest, that is kind of the best part about property management. Now, not the fires and the loss, of course, but the unknown. And I don't think there's a property manager on the planet that can say they've encountered every problem and solved every one of them. We
Right.
all run,
Right.
we all run into new challenges every week. There's always little nuances, and different property managers will come up with different solutions to the same
Mm-hmm.
problem. And so the industry in general, it'll keep you on your toes, and we're in a constant state of learning.
Right.
And so like the one piece of advice that I would give to a young or a new property manager kind of goes along with what our one of our company's core values, and that's just do the right thing when no one's watching.
Right.
And we're all learning and making decisions every day that we think are right. But in order to do that, we always have to be honest and communicate. And unfortunately, we're like I said, we're in that industry where we don't make good news calls very often. And so
Wow.
we are that bearer of bad news, and nobody likes to make those calls, but you can never let your fear stop you from doing it. So
Right.
the faster you rip the band-aid off, the faster you can get past it, acknowledge it, and we can solve it.
And move
So
on. Right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, very well said. Yeah, I mean, it's like you don't hear about those things until you're talking to somebody in the industry like you.
Mhm.
I mean, for me, it's like I'm the bearer of good news and bad news, right?
Yeah.
But for you, it's like
Uh,
when you're connecting with them, it's all, hey, we got a leak, right? Or hey, somebody doesn't want to do X, Y, and Z, right? So,
mhm.
but yeah, that is incredible. Thank you so much, Clark. How can
Cool.
people connect with you?
So you can connect with me on our website. You can look at EVRHI, which is Elite Vacation Rentals Hawaii.com. And on there, you can look at all of our vacation rental properties. At the same time, it also shows all of our property management. It shows our bios in there, and it has links to our different social medias and stuff like that. In general, most of our business is run through referrals, so it's all phone number, email. At the same time, I run my own. I have my own personal social medias, and actually have some of our properties on there too. So you can link up with me on there too.
Awesome. Well, you not only gain a property manager, but you also gain a friend here on island.
Yeah, exactly.
Clark, I thank you so much for providing so much value to people if they are exploring, getting property and renting it out, right? Which is
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me a platform to speak about it. A lot of people, everyone hears property management and they just think toilets late at night, and it's not fun to talk about. So I appreciate you letting us talk about it. And I appreciate you for doing what you do on your side. I know the owners that you deal with are super happy. I've heard nothing but great things from every single one of them. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll help support on our end.
awesome. Thank you so much, Clark. I really appreciate it. And likewise, the people that are with you, they're like, oh my gosh, because they come from another situation, right, of where
Mhm.
they were not treated properly. So I thank you for taking care of all the people, and yeah, you're a great resource on island. It's
Thank you.
and you have an amazing last name. I mean, Kahawaii, like it's like
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. A lot of people, a lot of people do mention it.
it is gorgeous. It's Kahawaii.
Thank
I mean,
you.
you got Hawaii in there. I mean,
I
it's like,
know.
yeah, like like Kealoha, right? The name
Yeah,
Kealoha, right?
exactly.
You got the aloha in there, but you got Hawaii in there.
Yeah,
It's a blessing
a
already.
lot of people do mention it, but yeah, it comes up
Yes,
sometimes. So
right.
thank you.
All right, my friend. So we say aloha and thank you so much for watching. If you want to connect with Clark, you already know how to get a hold of him. He's incredible, hard worker, and will get you what it is that you need in terms of renting your property here in Paradise. Have a beautiful day, guys. Aloha.
Mahalo.